everybody. Hopefully, everybody's having a fantastic Thursday night. I know I certainly am for no real damn good reason, but still, it's Thursday, and that makes us ever closer to Friday, and therefore, it's a good day. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight. We've got Dillon Brown, horror filmmaker. I'd like to consider Dillon a friend. I don't know. Are we there yet, Dillon?
We're there. We can take that step.
Okay, good.
Oh, that's so cute. And you did it live.
This is what always made every Sadie Hawkins dance awkward for me.
See, Reginald, we were there when.
This is what makes it right here.
We can go back and we can say, "Oh, we remember."
We're not making a podcast; we're making moments,
right?
And that's what counts. But we got a great show lined up tonight. We're providing entertainment. This is the fastest night on the internet, and we're going to have a fantastic hour tonight with Dillon Brown. Usually what we do at this point in time to just get things moving right along is we check in with our East Coast correspondent for a little bit of a news segment. So let's go ahead and roll that beautiful news footage. Okay, and our news usually comes from one place only.
Yeah,
it's the lovely state of Florida.
It's just the state
of for us tonight.
It just keeps on giving. So I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. So let's roll it out and we'll see what happens. Okay. So Florida man,
just like my Sadie Hawkins dance in junior high.
Yeah. Except that whole close your eyes and stick your hand out. I'm not falling for that again. Never again.
I mean, after the 8th time you started to get a little suspicious.
And I really don't think you lost a puppy. I'm just saying. I'm saying right now, I really don't think you ever lost a puppy.
But you did get a couple pieces of candy, though.
Yes, I did. So we go to our favorite cryptid. Oh, the cryptid that just keeps on giving. So this week, Florida man originally throws 7-inch knife after being denied ride to GameStop. So
I've got a lot of questions, but go ahead.
Okay. Palm Coast, Florida. A Florida man allegedly threw a 7-inch kitchen knife at a person on Monday after he was denied a ride to GameStop, according to the Flagler County Sheriff's Office. James Colasanti, 19, asked someone for a ride to GameStop, and when they said no, he allegedly pulled out 2 knives and threatened to kill them. Okay. Was there a game release on Monday that I don't know about? Was there that we had to go 2 knives? 2 knives for GameStop?
I think.
Well, I guess it was if he had to get a connecting ride.
Oh.
He should be given a little credit, though, because if he had 2 and he only threw 1, to me, that shows some restraint, you know.
Okay, well, wait. It gets better.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
So someone apparently took the knives away from Colasanti, but he then reportedly turned back into the kitchen and grabbed a 7-inch knife and threw it.
Now, what kind of knife was it, though? That's important, I think.
Yes, because Deadpool 2 taught us that the cream cheese spreader,
Yeah.
So Colasanti eventually jumped a fence of a nearby high school, which sent the school into lockdown mode.
Oh, this is daytime.
According to the sheriff's office, law enforcement found Colasanti in a storage container on school property and was armed at the time. No students were in danger, deputy said, because in Florida, the kids just carry guns, so. I'll see your 7-inch knife. Here's my Colt 1911. So
I've got so many questions.
So do I.
First of which being, did he know the driver?
It does not. There is no clear statement about that.
Okay. Not that it puts a totally different spin on the story, But to me, I kind of find it funnier if it's just a passerby.
Well, it said that
Friend, not a relative, but just someone like, on their way past his house.
I feel like it was probably his mom, because 19-year-old, no driver's license, Florida. I'm thinking, Mom, I gotta go to GameStop, and she just said no.
And we never got details on what game it was either, right?
No,
Was
this
it a game? I do admit they do sometimes have some great clearance items.
this is what the sheriff's office official statement was. It doesn't get any more pathetic than this.
Give it an hour. It is Florida.
Right. Where, as Florida says, hold my beer.
Because I mean, that really is sort of pointing to the stands, right?
Right.
And Florida thing, it doesn't get any more pathetic than this.
Yeah. I mean, at
As
that
you check
particular
the line.
point in time, every trailer park in Florida just went, you know what? Hold my beer. Here I come.
I think every trailer park in Florida was ready to drive their kid to GameStop.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
It's funny though that when you said Florida man, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm starting to get old enough to where I don't think of a 19-year-old as a man. So when you said 19, I'm like, oh, a Florida kid. But I guess technically it is a man. But oh God,
Right. Yeah. 19 is sort of that's sort of like a gateway age, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I still do sort of consider that more of a teenager, I think.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's when you move from the
Right.
top bunk to the bottom bunk.
You have friends who are 21, so you stop asking your uncle to get you beer.
Right.
There's
Right.
a lot of rites of passage here to the 19-year-old.
And
you
in
probably have
Florida,
your own meth pipe by now.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
You're almost like a Jedi.
Yeah.
You go through the process of, instead of constructing your own lightsaber, in Florida, it's your own meth pipe.
Right. And instead of the Padawan braid, full mullet.
Oh yeah.
But you do get a different colored crystal.
Oh,
The whole truth.
I want
Yes.
the purple meth pipe. Just saying.
That's the one that says "bad motherfucker" on it too. So
Right.
the Mace
I just-
Windu meth pipe.
I love these stories that it just, it just
Wasn't
doesn't
that-
get any better than this.
I mean, let's kind of face it. Like, wasn't that a wasted opportunity in the prequel trilogy that we didn't have "bad motherfucker" written on the side of Mace Windu's lightsaber?
Yeah.
I
I feel
mean,
like
man.
the whole prequel trilogy to me was a wasted opportunity, but that's a story for another time. So
Yeah.
But it could have been highly elevated with
Yes.
just the inclusion of that on Mace Windu's lightsaber.
Or just let him drop like Ezekiel 17, like just let him pull it out.
All
Why
we
not?
needed was Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer in a small diner. That's all we needed.
And they had that. They had that moment.
On Tatooine.
Well, no, when Ben Kenobi went and met his friend, the coffee shop owner guy, the Camino,
Oh,
when he
yeah.
found out about the Camino, that's the
Right.
perfect opportunity for one booth over. Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer having their conversation one booth over.
And now
Somebody
after this
needs to
conversation,
do that.
let's talk about how we all miraculously managed to kiss a girl.
You
Yeah.
guys have kissed girls?
no
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I had a Canadian girlfriend for a while. Just couldn't make it here. She's really busy. She had family here in the States. So we've got a great show lined up. We swear we're going to get to it too. It's going to happen. Give us a few minutes.
Well, come on. A 7-inch knife being thrown and then having an entire school on lockdown for it. I love it.
This is the first time we've actually said the word knife after 7-inch on this show. So I feel like we've graduated anyways.
I do. Is there?
We're growing. We're making progress.
Just making sure nobody's punking us from behind. That's all.
Oh, I thought you were just going to do the Brady Bunch thing because we're all in squares.
Rectangle.
You're just going to look up and ask me a question. Again, another wasted opportunity.
Right. Well, I have tons of stupid questions if you want them. You
Moving
want one?
right along. Dillon Brown is our guest tonight, horror filmmaker, responsible for The Flock, Tahoe Joe, the forthcoming Ghost, and a contributor to the soon-to-be released horror anthology, Tales from the End Times. So, Dillon, if you could, for the people who don't know you, could you give us a little bit of a background on who you are and what bet you lost to actually be on our show tonight?
So, yeah, I'm Dillon Brown, indie filmmaker. I was sentenced by government officials to be on the show after throwing a 7-inch knife at my mother when she wouldn't take me to GameStop.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm a child, so I had to take it back there.
You're fine.
So, no, actually,
But it was
so I'm based
5,000
out of,
points in your GameStop card for the new Watchdog DLC.
yeah, and a
That's how it
Funko
all
Pop.
went down. That's how
And
it all went
right,
down.
and the newest Funko Pop, right?
Right,
So,
yeah.
so I run Horror Nerd Productions. It's based out of Reno, Nevada. So if anybody doesn't know Reno, we're like mini Vegas, but we're not close to Vegas. Everybody hears Reno and Nevada, so they just automatically assume Vegas is like, a hop, skip, and a jump away. We're actually about 7 to 8 hours north of Vegas, much closer to California than anybody believes. I literally work in California every day by commuting over there. So it only takes like 30 miles to pop over the border. And we're really close to famous Lake Tahoe. That's where obviously Tahoe Joe came from. And that was sort of a myth over here that I wanted to play with. But as far as our stuff that we do over here and our filmmaking and kind of what I think sets it aside is that we primarily use veterans of war or active service members or members of like first responders, law enforcement, paramedics in our films over traditionally trained actors. So it's terrifying sometimes because you'll have some people who I'm like, oh, this is going to be so rad. We got like a legit, sheriff officer. He's coming in. And then you start having that panic the day before of, oh God, what if this guy can't act at all? What are we going to do? But the funny thing is, I've never had anything happen once I've been working with them. It's like these guys are so excited to get in front of the camera. And sometimes I just basically let them go, like fully just let them go. And they know the lingo. They've got, kind of this presence already that most people don't have just based on sort of what they do for a living. And so it's super fun to just see what happens. And I've had to learn with this production company that we're kind of a fly by the seat of our pants deal, and we just see what happens a lot. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing over here.
Now,
How
are
did
you part of the military as well, Dillon?
I am not. I work for the Department of Defense, for the Army, but I'm a civilian. So it's a really unique situation to be a government employee, but not a government contracted employee. Like I am actually a federal worker, but I never had to serve or anything to work on the military base that I work on. So it's cool. It's really interesting that I didn't want to go into the military out of high school. Like I wanted to go to school and I had some things, but now to be working alongside them from the side of it that sort of gets to help ease their jobs, I guess I should say. Like my job is with Lean Six Sigma and like root cause analysis. So I'm trying to figure out where there's problems somewhere and then help implement tools to fix it. So it's like I want to make their job better by making it easier. And I just feel like it's a cool way to give back to those guys who put their lives on the line. So
what made you decide that was the direction you wanted to go?
2 words, and it's a name, Michael Rock. Michael is the main actor that I've worked with the most. And it was sort of a chance encounter. I was casting for The Flock. And at the time, so Ash probably knows too, it's like when you're just getting started in filming, everything is new, even like casting. So it's like you sort of have an idea of how it's probably supposed to work, and you don't really even know what you're doing in the pre-production phases. So at the time, I was thinking, okay, I need to get a table, and I'm going to run out of space, and I'm literally going to have actors like show up and walk through, and they're going to read, and we're going to read with them, and we'll do some things, and that's how we're going to cast. And so I hosted one of those events, which was hilariously awful, actually, because I didn't really even know what I was looking for. I'm not prompting them with great things, really. So it's like, I don't even know. I was setting these people up to just look terrible, you know. Uh, but this guy showed up, and he just had a very different presence about him than anybody else in the room. And I said, you know, we're casting for some mercenary type characters. And the first thing he said was, "Oh, that's cool. That's basically my life." And I'm like, huh? And he's like, "Well, I'm a former Green Beret, and I currently work for a task force that takes down pedophiles. Now, I go in and I catch bad guys and basically put the hammer down on sex trafficking and that kind of stuff." And I'm like, okay, that's badass in and of itself. But like, I don't care if this guy can act. Like, if I need to lead a team of mercenaries, this is the guy I want with the crew, because I can default to him for realistic dialogue or for training things, you know. And so it was kind of just an immediate, yep, he's on board. Um, and then we started working together, and I was noticing that every time other actors were late to things, Michael was always 10 minutes early. Every time other actors couldn't show up for something, Michael would stop what he was doing and make sure he was ready to be there. And I just learned that the guy was super dedicated to what we were doing, that I could lean on him to start working him into the story more and more. Because originally he was supposed to be a really tiny part of the story. And as I got to know him, I started finding excuses to give him more and more lines and stuff. And then we just totally hit it off. And so once I realized how cool it was to work with vets, and Michael shared with me that acting was like a therapeutic form of dealing with PTSD, because you get to step into the shoes of someone else for a little while, and you get to go act out these scenarios that aren't quite realistic but could have a happy ending, versus maybe not so much in here when those events happened. It was helping to do those things, and so it just really seemed like the right thing to do. And I have no regrets on moving in this direction. It has been a blast.
Now, what was originally the genesis for you getting into filmmaking, just in general?
Man, so my parents took me to see Jurassic Park when I was 3 years old. I got the sign back over there, and I've got a huge toy collection over here you can't see. Um, and I wanted to make movies the minute I saw those dinosaurs walk across the screen. Like, I could not fathom how Steven Spielberg did it. I was so fascinated. So ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to make movies. I just didn't really know how to do it. And my dad had an old VHS video camera, and I used to record stuff with my friends. And I fell out of it for a while, started writing. And as much as I love writing, I published some books or whatever. I just felt like I was missing something by not visualizing those ideas. So right around the time that COVID hit, I thought, well, the military base has a lot of us teleworking or just flat away from work. And I was like, you know what? This is the time to pick up the camera and start going. And so I just decided one day, honestly, that I did not want to live a life of regret. So it's just time to start telling those stories visually.
And then, were you always a genre enthusiast or sci-fi things of that nature?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was like, dude, my babysitters in the summertime when my parents were at work were like VHS schlock from the local video stores, and I wanted to watch all of it. You know, blood, boobs, beer, and beasts. Like, give me all those, and I'm down. And creature features, especially, like that was my shit.
Oh yeah.
So I'm trying to reach behind me here in my wall of collectibles.
And we couldn't hear it at all, by the way.
I am a huge Jurassic Park guy. I actually own a Jurassic Park Jeep Wrangler the same year as the movie.
Yes.
And I'm in the process of, I work on it a little bit here and there, but it runs, drives. I'm in it whenever I can be. So I actually own, the YJ that was in, or a style that was in, the movie. And that was why I wanted that one. I wanted that year, that model, because that was the one that was in Jurassic Park.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I'm trying to get a piece of my
I don't know
memorabilia.
if you guys can see it or not, but I got a half sleeve tattoo of the Gates and a big T-Rex on there, and just decided to put it on myself permanently. So,
But Jurassic Park is an interesting film for me for a lot of reasons. One of which because I think it represents this perfect synthesis of elements that came together that hasn't really been done that well since. It seems that Hollywood has a real problem of knowing when to use practical versus CGI and vice versa. It's either that they're all in on one or all in on the other. And although I do like practical above CGI, also as a filmmaker, I realize that sometimes practical isn't practical.
yeah,
But what I do understand is that often I think there are points where again there's a synthesis that films just can't seem to reach. Jurassic Park did it on such a scale and to such perfection that we're still looking back, on a film from what, 93?
Yes.
yeah,
Yep.
We're still looking
having
back.
its 30th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
So
We're still looking back on a film from 93
Oh, that's awesome.
to see,
That is cool.
how to get it right. And we can't really seem to replicate that balance.
Yeah, I can't think of another film that's done it that well.
I for me, watching that movie, we've talked about this before. Remember when we did the books that translated to movies?
Yeah.
And I thought the translation from the book to the movie was so spectacularly done. Because in the book, you kind of get that sense of wonder. But there's that scene when they're driving out in the Jeeps and, like she's looking at the plant leaf like, this species of fauna hasn't been around, and he's just like grabbing at her, trying to get her to turn around and look. And then they make that swing and there it is. There's just that oh my God, there's a dinosaur,
The actors, the music, the direction, everything really had this sense of wonder.
Yeah.
And that again is another thing that I feel is really hard for films to replicate. Films sometimes approach subject matter as though they're the smartest person in the room.
Yep.
They want to show a level of expertise or they want to give you so much exposition that you sort of drown in it, where Jurassic Park didn't do that. Jurassic Park approached, and in my opinion, it approached every scene as if the filmmakers were as amazed by what was happening, as the cast and crew, and probably were, considering how much new technology they were using.
Yeah.
That I'm sure that they were looking at some because we know that Phil Tippett was originally going to do a lot of the stuff. Phil Tippett, in my opinion, is he's the other Ray Harryhausen. Phil Tippett's been around for forever, and he's done some fantastic work. We know that Phil Tippett was supposed to be doing a lot of that stop motion, and I know that when they first brought in a couple of the other guys to say, hey, listen, we want to take a look at doing some of the 3D stuff, that I think Phil Tippett was almost quoted as saying, well, we might have to find another job. Some of that 3D stuff was so convincing, and they were even doing like a different kind of stop motion interpolation. There was something that they were doing a little bit differently that was supposed to be smoother, and it was supposed to fill in some of those blanks, but compared to what they were doing with the 3D, it still just seems sort of rudimentary.
Yeah.
So,
and let's not forget Goldblum.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that part, okay, there are parts that you look at and you could say, oh, I could see somebody else playing that part, or maybe he wasn't the best person for. Jeff Goldblum is Dr. Ian Malcolm. You cannot, there is no other way.
Yeah, I totally agree. and he fit. So Michael Crichton really based Ian Malcolm off of himself, kind of this, semi-cocky, very smart, kind of the smartest person in the room. I mean, Crichton was married like 7 times. He was very tall. He wore black all the time. So, I mean, it was very clear that Malcolm was him. And Goldblum just sort of really represented that version of Michael Crichton that I always knew from studying Crichton's work. And so, yeah, I loved him in that. And then to your point, Ash, with the childlike wonder, I do know. So I just read this. I thought this was fascinating that James Cameron had originally opted for the rights to the book, and he's coming off this like huge high of Terminator 2. He's got his hands on this technology, right? So like he knows kind of where it's probably going to go visually. But he was going to make like a R-rated version. He was going to go hardcore with the book, a lot more violence. And he said that when he watched the movie, he said Steven Spielberg was the absolute perfect person for the movie, because he said, I could never have tapped into a child's mind the way that Spielberg looked at every one of these scenes like a child would, and bringing that sense of dinosaurs to kids. And he's totally right. Spielberg has always felt like a big kid to me. It's just, I could talk about the movie forever. So cut me off whenever, because it is injected into my veins.
Absolutely not. I will talk Jurassic Park with you the whole night if you want. It's just, like I said, it was to me, it was a time in my life that I needed that sense of wonder back. I was going through a lot. My twins were born in December of '93, and going through that period of like preparing to be a father of twins was like freaking me out. Yeah. So having that momentary sense of wonder was like, oh, this is incredible. And so much of it has translated. I mean, I remember when they opened the Universal Studios in Florida, they had the Jurassic Park. Couldn't wait to get there. Could not wait to get there. Just so excited about it. And then when I finally got old enough and my kids were out of the house and I finally had a little money, and I was like, I'm going to get another Jeep, because I've had Jeeps in the past. I'm like, I know which one I'm looking for. I am looking for, and I found one. It's not painted the same, but it is the exact year, make, and model from the movie. And it just like, it's like, I could go hours on Jurassic Park.
There's a guy at my kid's school that has one of the Jeeps painted like exactly like it, and it's the same year, and he did a full replica. So one of these days, you guys might be doing a Nevada Man story when I go steal it from him.
And drive it to Florida.
Yeah, right.
You're going to use a 7-inch knife, right?
With the 7-inch knife, yes.
We only go 8 and above in Nevada, man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and if you could you at least just leave a GameStop gift card?
Yeah, you know what? Okay, it's the best I could do.
Just so we can start making some loose connections between these events.
Or even that month's issue of Game Informer, that'd be all right too.
Yeah.
All right, that's a small price to pay.
Some breadcrumbs. Yeah, some breadcrumbs. But I think films like Jurassic Park are interesting to me, because they come at a time when we didn't realize that we needed a movie like that. And I think that those are the movies that usually end up endearing themselves to us and stick with us, are those films that we didn't realize that we needed a dinosaur film.
Yeah.
Because let's sort of face it, because we equated dinosaurs in films basically with Harryhausen, with the old dinosaur kind of stuff, or with some of the cheap B-movie stuff, that surfaced every now and then.
Yeah.
We didn't really equate dinosaurs with cutting-edge technology, with world-renowned directors. It just there wasn't any real connective tissue there. So when it did come out, I think a lot of us sat there in our seats thinking, I didn't know how badly I needed this sense of wonder. I didn't know how badly I needed this kind of movie. And I think as a filmmaker, we're all sort of trying to do that somewhat. We're all looking for that sort of hole in programming, or hole in the genre, or hole in, whatever is available, whatever's available on the slate. We're always looking for, this isn't available to me now, so I want to make it.
Yeah.
I want to be the person to sort of fill that slot. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I do want to talk about sort of your creative process and this idea of, so you were a writer and then decided, okay, I want to, start making some movies. Obviously, in our day and age, it's a little bit different. Things are more accessible. A lot of filmmakers are, have phone will travel kind of guys. You can make an entire film, on an iPhone. I've used the iPhone for certain looks before when I've shot stuff, just to get out of using the cinema camera and to give something a different look and feel. So, what was your approach going into that first film? Because we're talking about not necessarily knowing what to do, and then not necessarily knowing what to do to piece together an hour and a half of not knowing what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the first thing I ever did when it came to doing any kind of filmmaking whatsoever was, a buddy of mine had done some film school stuff. He was down in Santa Rosa, California, and he said, "Hey, I got a sweet camera." I think at the time it was Canon had these, rad video cams, like a GL2 or something, and it was like badass, and he had one, and he had some access to some actors, and he said, "Hey, you write? You have anything that we could convert to a script, and I'll film it." So, a lot of my filmmaking started because I watched somebody else do it first. But even he didn't really know what he was doing per se either. He kind of knew some things about lighting, and he knew some things about post-production. But he was really new too. So I got to go through that process with them a little bit in the early 2000s. But I just did not have the courage to go at this thing by myself. So when I finally decided to do it, I had made a couple of short films, and I realized that shooting traditionally was really freaking tough without having a crew. Like, if I did not have a lighting crew and sound guys and all this, it was a huge pain in the ass. And that's sort of when the found footage thing started to catch me, because I always liked the movies and I didn't necessarily always know about a lot of them. I knew about Blair Witch, of course, and I knew about Cloverfield and the heavyweights. But I started thinking, okay, if I'm going to make a particular project, and I don't have the whole crew to shoot this thing traditionally, how could I get myself in the freaking thing without being like a major player in it? And that's when found footage was like, that's perfect. A person can be operating the camera as, a character in the movie, and that will allow me to have those, I don't want to really say like the cheap way out, but it gives me those liberties, of like, if there's a glitch, or if the sound is a little wonky, or if there's a sun flare, whatever, people don't care about that because it's supposed to be raw footage. So
creative intent.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we file it under, creative intent.
Yes, right, there you go. And so I think knowing that I sort of had that protection of that, this is okay to show in this style of movie, it wasn't nearly as scary to tackle The Devil's Children, which was the first feature I ever tried to do. Well, I did it. I shouldn't say tried to do, but I did the movie. It still feels like a movie I tried to do, even though it's out there. Because I don't even want to watch. I can't even go back and watch it. It makes me cringe so hard. But at the time, it was the best I could do. So am I proud of it for the time? Absolutely.
Right.
But I think that is kind of like how I did the approach was, it's okay for these things to happen because that fits the genre and it fits the style. So there's really no excuse now not to just go for it. But like you said, with sort of filling in those slots of what's kind of needed at the time, I watched a whole bunch of found footage movies leading up to that, and I kept realizing the same thing. It was like, okay, everything in these movies happens almost the exact same way. And I wanted to try and find a way to not have that happen. So I'm like, okay, let's maybe switch out some of these moments and actually shoot them a little more traditionally, where the camera, is more of an omniscient presence now. And let's maybe shoot it like it's an interview in certain spots. And then another part will be found footage stuff. And We'll add some music. And so I do all these things thinking this would be a little different. It'll stand out. And oh my God, I put it in a found footage group on Facebook. Ash, you know the one. And I've broken like every rule that these people live by for their found footage movies, right? And the movie just gets eviscerated because I broke all of their tropes and their rules. And I'm like, oh God, I try to do something different and I am paying dearly now for it.
I'm interested in that because, you know, when you look back at how found footage evolved, it seemed like every new one broke a little bit of the mold from the one before. So
and that is 100% truth, but they don't want to agree with me on that.
But see, like, okay, I we're gonna do an advertisement a little bit for Ash's film here. When I say Holes in the Sky, Sean Miller's story, that I detest found footage films. Detest them because I got them thrown at me for 8 straight years, and that's all I ever saw. Then all of a sudden, Ash says, "Hey, I'm making a found footage film," and I have to go, "Okay, I love you, brother. I'll watch this one." And when I watched it,
the only reason I made it was just to fucking annoy
I'm pretty sure. But when I watched it had that, it broke the mold. And that's what made me say, okay, I get it. So I don't get where these people, like, is it, I should not say that. I get it perfectly because I am a Ghostbusters collector.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but to jump on, I think that what you get is, and I think this is a problem that we've had with fandom for a while, is that when people get really close to something, like really close, like let's take Star Wars, for example.
That's just about to say.
When they get really close to something, they feel ownership of it.
Yep.
And they almost feel like they're gatekeepers. They feel like they're custodians. And for them to keep that purity of what they love, that's what you do when you want something pure, is you start setting rules to keep it from being sullied, to keep it from being tarnished. So I think that is a lot of what ends up happening, is that it's not just enough to watch it. It's not just enough to sort of commemorate it by, we watched it this many times, we watch it on a holiday, etc. It's also, we need to own it. And we're gonna own it if we set rules. Therefore, it falls in under our ownership because it worked under our applied rules, or it didn't. And I get it. Like, I get it, because I feel that way sometimes about stuff. I think as I've gotten older, I've probably become a lot more forgiving. Like there's sometimes where, even if I'm sitting there thinking, okay, this goes against everything that I loved about this in my childhood, sometimes I still sit there and go, I'd rather have a world with it in it than a world without it.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm a little more forgiving of those things, than other people.
I'm not forgiving at all.
However, however you get Steve, who is not. But there's a lot of stuff too that I admittedly, if the tone is totally wrong or whatever, I'll get very, very vocal about it. But I guess what I'm saying is I understand the mentality, but I don't subscribe to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think what you said about taking ownership part of it, like I'm in a lot of Ghostbusters collectors forums, and like I've sent pictures in, and I'll get people that just rip me apart for having, oh, well, you have this one that was issued in 1997, and then below it is the one that was issued in 2000, and the one that was the two that were issued in between. Oh my God, dude, I don't really care. I have them all. Lighten up, bro. Lighten up. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know I had to have them stacked in a specific order to make you happy.
Yeah, that's how the filming goes. It feels like many people, I'm sure Ash has had it. It's like many times fans start to get a little bit too close to us when we're in those groups, as if they can sort of dictate what we're supposed to do with the movies when we make them. And it's like, and if they're not entirely happy with the decisions you made, you've somehow offended, them, or you've tarnished this relationship they thought they had built with you. Um, and I'm not knocking fans at all. It's just that was like my unfortunate like first experience though was learning that there was this hardcore fandom in found footage, and I thought, oh my god, I just came in here with my own Star Wars prequel,
Just holding up your Jar Jar doll
Yep.
right in front of the camera.
Yeah, right?
It's like, uh-oh.
Like,
here's the floodgate.
with a best
They're
character
open.
in Star Wars history plaque right below it,
Oh man.
So you've been able to, Dillon, however, sort of construct your own universe, though. You're going back to themes that you've looked at before, and that's the case with your forthcoming film, Ghost. So can you talk a little bit about, first of all, what Ghost is, give us some details of when we can expect to see it, and also how it harkens back to some of your earlier work?
Yeah, so we're getting close to the release date. Ghost, it drops July 9th. It's going to hit streaming. I know it's like POV Horror, Wicked Horror TV, a bunch of small streamers. And then I know it's been accepted by Tubi and Plex and others. I don't know when they're going to drop it. Sometimes they're like early, sometimes they're late. I really don't know. But it is a complete ode, homage, whatever, to the VHS stuff that I was talking about earlier that I watched as a kid. It has a very like 80s, early 90s schlocky action feel to it. We've got like the over the top bad guys and awesome cheesy Arnold Schwarzenegger inspired one-liners when the good guys kill somebody. I've got some techno music in there. Again, some music for the found footage people. There you go. You're getting music.
Oh, they're gonna hate you.
But essentially, it's shot like a mockumentary. It's almost like in our universe here, this character Ghost. He's a mercenary for the Catholic Church, for the Vatican, and these guys are like part of this secret organization that has been tasked to take out dangerous cultists, to take out demons, all sorts of things. Almost like a church version of the Men in Black, right? They're keeping the world safe from ever knowing about these things by eradicating the problem. And so our character Ghost, he was part of a group of guys, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. That's kind of where the name came from. And he has kind of been out of the game for a little while, but his father, Jeremiah, a man who was in the same situation he was and working for the church for years, has reached out to him for the first time in like 30 years. And Jeremiah has left a video behind basically telling Ghost, like, you need to get back in the game because I'm an old man now and I'm on my deathbed. And there is something very dangerous happening, almost like an apocalyptic event. So it brings Ghost back into the fold. And so Ghost is played by Michael Rock again. I'm in it as a silent character named Monk. Monk took a vow of silence and he runs the camera. That was a great way to get me out of having to
How convenient, Dillon.
right? But he communicates with hand signals. He does a lot of thumbs up or thumbs down, and which was really fun because we had to do a lot of comedic timing to those thumbs up and thumbs down things where without him ever saying a word, a lot of people who've actually watched the screeners have said, we loved Monk. And I'm laughing because I'm like, what do you mean you loved Monk? You never see him. You just see his hand giving thumbs up or thumbs down. But I had to find a way to make this silent character also kind of, fun and endearing. But we went as hard as we could with the action and the fun. Big practical monster at the end. I've got demons. I've got cultists. I've got gunplay with real trained, army guys. And it just was a freaking blast to shoot. And then it is connected to the Flock. Mike played that character Ghost in the Flock, but a much smaller character. And so what we sort of did was like a spin-off. It's like a sequel, I guess, but more of just a spin-off movie that you could watch on its own with connections back to that universe.
So you've got Ghost coming out. since we're running 15 minutes at the top of the hour, and you are contributing to this horror anthology. This is my way of being very self-serving.
Yes.
By bringing you into my overall master plan here, Dylan, to promote this. So, if you can tell us about, or as much as you can, however, about what's going on with this horror anthology, F Tales from the End Times.
So, this brilliant guy that did this kind of little known alien movie, I don't know, plugging in holes in the sky or something. No, so Ash reached out to me to do this thing. And as soon as you said, hey, I want to talk to you about something, I had this weird feeling that it was going like in a way of working together. So I was like, I don't care if he wants to shoot a porno, like I'm in, let's go, whatever we want to do.
That's how he got us, right, Reginald?
That was the email I waited 8 hours to send or not.
But
I decided not to.
All right. I want to know, did you ever really have the puppy? I need to know now.
I got a puppy, but it didn't make it. It was a long mail trip from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I don't think he plugged holes in the box.
No. Well, I mean, I threw a couple Cheez-Its in there, but
Schrodinger's puppy.
It's a 7-inch blade in it. Sorry.
That's what you want to call it.
So, as far as my contribution, I knew that we were working on Ghost, yeah. So I thought, okay, if I am going to contribute to this, I have to find a way to, how can I, shoot a short film right on the heels of a big feature, my biggest feature to date. And so I thought it would be a lot of fun to go from the bombastic craziness of Ghost to a more intimate story for my particular entry. And so I'm actually doing just a 2-person film. It's 2 actresses, and we've got a really cool story. I'm not going to give any details on the story, but I shoot it. Actually, it was today's Thursday. I shoot it a week from today. We go into production. We're shooting we've got a whole night slotted. And I don't know if it's going to happen or not, because I'm a little bit, I'm the one that's shooting it, so I have to be cautious. My actresses are literally trying to convince me to shoot the entire 15 to 20 segment or 20-minute segment in one single continuous take. They are very, very trained stage actors. So they're used to being on stage for long periods of time and knowing a lot of dialogue and choreography. And so we're going to give it an attempt. And if I can make it happen, it will be super cool, because it would essentially, it'll kind of be a grab you by the throat from the minute the thing starts until the minute it ends, with a lot going on in between. So we'll see if we can pull it off. And I'm really hoping we do, because I think it'd be pretty bitchin'.
That sounds great.
Well, I obviously can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really excited. I'm really, really excited by what everybody's bringing to this. It gives me an opportunity to work on something where I'm still a viewer in a sense. I still get to play the part of the audience too, which is pretty great.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, here's something that I always ask filmmakers and just enthusiasts all around is, because we watch a lot of films. I watch a ton of films. I'm a movie buff, besides liking the craft of films too. And sometimes because of that, I take in a lot. I also run a horror site, which means we get a ton of screeners, and I'm always looking at films. What's the last thing that you saw that really sort of took you off guard and maybe sort of renewed your faith in movies? Because I get these periods where I'm like, I've seen it all, this is, we're reaching a trend, and we see the trend, and then something sort of will come along that will literally just, it'll blindside me. And where the hell did this come from? And when I do it as not only a creator, but, as a member of the audience, I'm like, okay, we've got a lot more. We've got a lot more out there. So for you, and this could be 2 years, 3 years, it could be last month, but something that for you just really turned your head.
I've kind of got 2, if I can bring up 2 of them that really knocked me on my ass. one of them, it's a little bit older, but Ready or Not was so fun. That the wedding turned deadly game of hide and go seek.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one for me was so fun because the setup seemed very familiar. I was not really super familiar with Radio Silence and their stuff, but from like the tone of the trailer, I thought, okay, I've seen movies that are cheeky and that kind of have some humor and stuff in them. But what I wasn't expecting in that movie was it to have like every tonal shift possible within this one movie. Like I completely fell in love with the main character. She was like immediately easy to root for. So I wanted nothing bad to happen to her. And I'm finding myself like very worried for her through the whole thing, which is rare because most of the time with the characters, I'm like, yeah, whatever, they're super annoying or, but she was so good. And then I was laughing hysterically through the movie. Then there was like cringeworthy gore that was really well done and pretty gross. There was some jump scares. Um, and then it had this ending, and I'm not going to say it for anybody that hasn't seen it, but it had this ending that just, it's like they toy with you on whether or not this particular event's going to happen or not. And just when you think it's not, it does go the way that you probably were wavering on. And I just was like, I was like laughing out loud in the theater in the last 30 seconds of the movie because it was just fucking so relentless and it wouldn't stop. And so that one left me, I left the theater just so happy with that one. And then the other one that's really recent was Barbarian. I knew nothing about that movie. I literally saw, there's a horror movie from The Whitest Kid You Know member, and he made this horror movie, and everybody loves it. And it's going to be on HBO this date. So I was like, okay, cool. So I read nothing about it, and I put it on one night. I've got a 1-year-old. At the time, he was, I don't know, 6 months old or whatever. And I just got into bed. I'm on like solo dad thing. My wife works nights, so I'm like feeling all froggy. Dad finally got the baby to bed. It's my first foray into this whole thing. And I'm like, I'm going to watch a movie. I'll check out this Barbarian movie. So for like the first half of the movie, I'm kind of just underwhelmed. I'm like, okay, I feel like I've seen this shit so many times. Like, this is what everybody's been talking about. And then I just get like right hooked to the jaw when that moment happens. And then from that part on to the rest of the movie, I did have that moment of I can still be surprised by a horror movie. Like, usually I call what's going to happen, and this one just sort of had so many things happening out of left field, and then it just gives you a moment that is like a massive holy shit, only to cut the film away from that moment and then take you back like a 24-hour span and give you another story from another character leading up to that moment again. So it's like you get walloped with, oh God, this is what's going on. And then he makes you sit through 30 minutes of the movie building its story again without that moment yet, but you know it's coming. And so for me, I just thought it was like a brilliant pacing decision to do it that way. And so I've been recommending Barbarian to everybody.
I've become a really big fan of this filmmaking team of Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson.
Yes.
Everything those guys put out seems to just really vibe with me. I like the fact that they're always sort of pushing stories in weird new directions. I like the fact that as a creative team, it seems as though they're able to really strike that balance of being actors, filmmakers, creators, writers, directors, everything that I've seen. I thought The Endless was great. I really liked Synchronic with Anthony Mackie in
That
it.
one was really
And yeah, and Something in the Dirt, which came out last year, was just them making a movie during COVID because they could. They're seasoned filmmakers at this point, so why not? But everything they've put out genuinely has, if not surprised me, entertained me. So I'm always sort of looking for what these guys are doing next. And I think that for people who don't know who they are, it's interesting because when you introduce them to them, there's this whole back catalog of stuff going back to like 2013. It's like there's 10 years of these guys' movies that you can watch when you find out who they are and if you enjoy them. But yeah, I really liked both Ready Not and Barbarian. Ready or Not to me had and this happens sometimes with me, is whether it's a horror movie or science fiction or a non-genre film, there are movies that seem to know what uh that summer blockbuster template is.
Yeah.
They seem to know how to give you characters that polarize you. They seem to know how to pull the rug out from under you. They seem to know how to make just enough over the top that it sort of gets you giddy and gets you spinning. Um, and that movie had it. That movie, obviously, the writers sort of have this summer blockbuster template that we don't see much anymore. It's strange, but it seems as though that ability for filmmakers to sort of take a step back and go, we're going to make a small movie that feels big, or we're going to make a big movie that feels even bigger, and we're going to give the audience action and drama and comedy and horror. And when they leave, they're going to be able to attach themselves to at least one note of this film. And that seems to strangely be sort of a lost art. I think, you and I might feel that same way when it comes to a lot of 80s movies and even early like 90s movies, is that there was this way to write. I think there was a way to write back then that has largely been lost. And I think that now this weird model of writing is people trying to write. Like I don't think it's as organic as it used to be. I think there are people sitting down trying to write the model, and instead of already having the model and writing based off of it. And I think you see that a lot with films that are just very uneven. They might have some fantastic elements, but it's like they read the cliff notes on how to make a summer blockbuster,
Yeah.
and just didn't quite get there. But Ready or Not, I felt, had all those elements. Like it just tuned in to this really good script, where even if you weren't a horror fan or even not an action fan, the comedy could sustain you. The characters were well written enough that you could attach yourself to at least one of them, or become polarized on another, that it could guide you through the motions of at least wanting to see what would happen to them. And that impressed me a lot. The writing, that does that for me, that really entertains me, impresses me. And I think Ready or Not definitely did that. There's been a few that have come along, occasionally, that manages to do that, where you just sit down and go, oh, they cracked the code. Like when they sat down to write this thing, you could just tell it was like a game of mousetrap. We've put it all together, all these pieces fit, and now the audience can watch as we spring the trap.
Yeah.
And it's pretty fulfilling and satisfying. So yeah, those are two movies that I really enjoyed. What are you excited about that's coming out? Because that's always something for me, especially as we approach getting into sort of the gist of the summer, the summer blockbuster slate. Anything that holds your interest right now?
Well, so I don't think there's a trailer yet. I'm pretty sure he's close, but Stephen C. Miller has a werewolf movie that I know that he did. It's called like Year 2 or something like that, or Year 1 or something, with Frank Grillo is in it. And I guess it's got all these practical wolves. And so I'm stoked on that because I love werewolf stuff. So I'm really excited to see that one. And honestly, this one is like total guilty pleasure, but I'm pumped for the Meg 2. Like, give me Jason Statham fighting giant CGI shark.
Oh yeah, I was just talking about that the other day. I mean, it's just pure escapism. Pure escapism for me. And I'll sit, for an hour and 45 minutes and watch Jason Statham, punch a giant CGI shark in the nose. I'm fine with that. I'm totally cool with it.
Yeah, I'm super down for that.
It's for me, we're entering a sort of a weird phase, I think, of films where and I've always sort of felt this way, and we'll sort of we'll end the hour on a dour note. Why not? Hey, we've been so good this far, we got to bring it down a little bit, right? So I feel like we're entering an age of film where things have become almost like too purposeful, where people aren't writing for fun anymore. They're writing based on a consortium of marketing executives,
or to send a message. We have to send a message with our film.
Yeah.
What about here? What about this message? Have fun. Have fun with my film.
Well, and I think that's why films of the 80s especially still resonate with us so much. Is because, okay, if you really wanted to dissect, Jurassic Park, it still is sort of the Frankenstein syndrome.
Yeah.
Be careful of the children that you create because, Prometheus will have the desire to kill the father, which is the way it goes.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was still fun. No matter how many times you watch Jurassic Park, it's a fun movie. No matter how many times you watch The Goonies, it's a fun movie. Those movies were made to entertain. People were writing films to entertain. People were looking at films and they were looking at a story that hadn't been told yet, or a story that was told maybe years ago in black and white episodic serial form. And they're like, we need an adventure movie. We need this. We need that. And I think that was a great approach, was going, we don't have we don't have a thin man anymore. So therefore, all of a sudden, we have some of these film noir films come out, or even sci-fi film noir films based off of properties, like Blade Runner. There's this need to say, hey, I want to reinvent this character, but I want to reinvent it in an entertaining way, which is why we have Indiana Jones, we have Han Solo, we have these titular characters that they filled that need, that very, I guess you want to call it an archetype, a very Jungian sort of need for these anti-heroes, or just run-of-the-mill garden variety heroes, but stories that still sort of stand the test of time. But it seems like we're getting very distracted now, because I don't think writers are writing anymore. I think writers are translating now. And I think that that's a problem.
I agree. I know that like talking about the 80s and stuff being a huge influence on what I did with Ghost, we did not try to send a message like at all with Ghost. It was literally, I made the movie for myself to be a fun ass movie to make, where people, I would hope that when people watch it, they go, I would watch that again. I could put that on and knit. I could put that on and cook. I could put that on in the background while I do whatever, because it's fun. I don't necessarily have to lock into some crazy convoluted story. I can just watch it and pay attention to the loud stuff, like whatever, have fun with it. And I know that in the 70s and 80s, and John Carpenter and stuff, they had these political messages that were there, but they were not like beating you over the head with them and sacrificing the fun of the movie for them. And it's like, I think of They Live, clearly has a message with it.
Yeah.
Right.
But then you get like a 10-minute dumpster fight scene between freaking Roddy Piper and Keith David that is hysterically funny and totally does not need to be in that movie. But John Carpenter was like, no, we're going to have a ridiculous fight because it's fun to watch and people want to watch a fight.
It's one of my favorites.
And I think that obviously was an approach to storytelling that, and I don't think it's that the writers have gravitated from it. I think that it largely is probably a studio problem. I think, again, that this is story by design. I don't think it's story by storytelling anymore.
Yeah, there people. I'm sick and tired of the ripped from today's headlines, method of writing. Okay, I get it. There's crazy stuff going on all over the world. Whatever. There was crazy stuff going on all over the world in the 70s. Crazy stuff going on all over the world in the 80s. Somehow we found those movies that just had fun. Just had fun. Maybe it's the wrong way to put it, but Nightmare on Elm Street. We talked about this before. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. One of those movies that if it's on, I'm going to watch it.
Oh, yeah.
If it's on, I don't care what part of the movie I pick it up in, I'm watching it. Any one of the first 5 Halloween movies, if it's on, and I don't care where I'm picking it up, I'm watching it. I don't care. That is gone. That's gone.
As again, this is the fastest hour on the internet. We have such a great time talking with our guests. I can't thank you enough for being with us tonight, Dillon. It's been a blast. We've had a really good time. So if you can, give the audience a little bit of an idea of where they can go to find out what you're doing, get updates on your projects, if this is social media, what's the best way for people to find out what you're doing?
Yeah, we've got social media stuff. It's pretty much how we're doing everything now. So we've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Facebook and Instagram have their own Horror Nerd Productions pages. Twitter is the Horror Dads Productions, which is kind of this like umbrella company that buddies of mine, Josh Brucker, who's got a contribution to Tales from the End Times. We kind of came together and formed this mega group of all of our groups together, and we figured we're never always gonna make movies together, but we'll always, slap that logo on the front of those movies and list each other as producers and just help signal boost each other. So we run that way, and then a very important one as far as the veteran side of things. Mickey Sin, a guy who's been doing some PR stuff for me since I really started and taking me under his wing. Mickey is working on a nonprofit actually called Acting After Service, which is a nonprofit organization for vets to find work in film to use that therapeutic acting method for PTSD. So I'm wishing Mickey all the best on getting that going. And I know that Michael Rock will definitely be one of the first, spokesperson for that. And I'll help him in any way I can. But Mickey kind of saw what we were doing with Horror Nerd and has wanted to take that on. So I just wanted to get that message out there that there will be resources for vets and active duty, prior service. We are out here and we want to help work with you guys. So come find us, send us a message. We will try and find you guys work. We want to help. So any way we can. I mean, 27 veteran suicides a day. It's awful and it's terrifying. And if there's any chance that by putting them in one of our silly movies can help save somebody's life, then I mean, we want to be there.
Well, again, I think it's a wonderful cause. I can't thank you enough for providing us with entertainment and being on the show with us tonight, Dillon. So, you have a couple moments off the air for us?
What's that?
You have a couple moments off the air for us?
I do.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for watching tonight. Thank you so much. We still have Ron Chevary's interview that's gaining some steam for those of you who want to check out what Ron's going on. We talked to him last week. And as always, this will be up on YouTube as well as Facebook and about any other of our channels that you want to watch this on. Thanks to everyone who contributed in chat tonight, as well as those who popped in and out watching. Thanks, guys, and have a fantastic night.
Love you, Ron. I know you're watching.